Hello everybody, my name is Jeremy and today I am here to show you Wave Alchemy Triaz. This is a incredibly fully featured drum machine VST with all kinds of fun stuff under the hood, and I'm going to give you a thorough walkthrough. Check the chapter markers if you'd like to jump to a particular part of the tutorial, but with that said, let's just jump into what is going on with this interface. I'm going to start up at the top left to right, and we'll go through each little part here, and then we'll dive deeper into everything. At the top left of Triaz, we have the ability to pick between sound and sequencer. We'll get into sequencer a lot deeper later, but that is the first place that you might want to switch between modes. We have undo and redo, which is really great for some of the randomization functions we're going to be using later. Here we have the ability to go back and forth between presets and also open our preset browser, which we will get into a bit more. You can favorite, randomize, and save presets from this little top bar here as well. There's a context-sensitive help thing, so if you turn on the eye, you'll be able to go around and get a little bit of information about all this stuff, which I think is a really nice feature. Next to that, we have our settings. We have things like UI zoom, our sample locations, our initial preset, which we'll use just in a little bit, multi-out, which is very, very cool. You can actually export stems from Triaz using multi-out, and then mapping and routing and other kinds of information stuff. Overall volume is found right here, and then we get underneath that to a whole bar dedicated to our individual instruments, and these can be anything. There's a whole bunch of different types of samples that come with this. Library is extensive, and we'll be getting into that a bit more. So this is how you pick one of your channels. Below that, you can see that we have our channels, and we have 3 layers for every single instrument. That is the Triaz part of Triaz. Here you can see that we can link them together, meaning editing of their stuff down at the bottom can be all linked, or we can have them all independent. So that's very, very, very useful. To the right of that, we have the ability to open up our sample library here. You can see that we have all of our different drum types. I can click into here and we'll see that we have more than just drums. I love it. It's super, super cool. And then we have tags for each section. So if you wanted to go into like hi-hat closed, you can see that you have all these different tags down here, which helps you drive really deeply fast into the library and get what you're looking for. You can also randomize in the channel through a type, which is very, very useful. There's a lot of randomization functions in this that are really awesome. To the right of that, we'll have volume for the sample. And then here is our layer organizer, like how we choose what amount of each layer we want. This is super, super powerful because you can have 3 samples. And one of the keys to creating interesting drums is layering. So this really gives you a lot of power right here in this little triangular friend. Its namesake, little triangle. Below that, we're going to have all of our sound editing tools, which again are unique to each layer and can be linked or unlinked. Below that, we have our mixer. You can see that here's our mixer down here with the things you might expect for a mixer, panning, volume, solo, mute. We have delay and reverb send. We'll get into those a little bit later. Down here, we have the ability to save a channel and load a channel. So if you have a lot of settings built into that channel, you can load and save individual channels with all those settings. Oh, excuse me. We also have the ability to turn on and off a chromatic playback of the sample. And I'll show you that a little bit more in a bit. Channel effects are this really cool tilty EQ. I have never seen an EQ like this before, and I really, really like it. I actually asked the designers of this if they had a special name for this, and they were like, no, we just came up with this. We thought it was a cool idea, and indeed it is. We have a compressor, which can be used as a limiter because it will go all the way up to infinity, which is great. We have a shaper with some very cool tools we'll get into a little bit later. And then we have send effects, which we'll get into in a while, and then master effects, including a OTT style maximizer, which is super cool, and some mid-side EQ processing, which is also super cool. You'll also notice we have this thing that says drum randomizer over here. We will get into that in a bit as well. I'm going to go up to the top of the interface here where it currently says Among Us, and I'm going to click in, and you can see up in the upper left, we can search for things. We have the ability to look at the Triaz core library or all the libraries once expansions are installed. And here you can see that we have our user presets that we make. Over on the right, underneath the library, you can see that we have different genre types. So here's where you would select a genre. You see electronica, lo-fi, pop, disco, rap, and reggaeton are currently what it says. I'm filming with a pre-release version of Triaz, but when this video is released, there will be over 500 presets covering many other additional genres like tech house, techno, experimental, drum and bass, disco, and lots more. Below that, we can sort by favorites, sort favorites only if I had some. So I'm going to favorite Among Us just because I like the name. And I'm going to favorite this one, call it Cuddlebugs, because I like that too. So if I show favorites only now, you can see those show up. To the right of that, we have the ability to speed up or slow down by an entire half of the tempo. Down at the bottom of the interface, we can sync to the host tempo, but you'll also see that a lot of these have their own tempo built into it. So let's go ahead and listen to a couple. What does Among Us sound like? I'm not gonna lie, that kicks ass. Yeah. Yo, that kicks ass too. I like that. I'm gonna favorite that. If we go up to the upper right, you can hear that I've doubled it, or I can half it. This is really useful at tempos like 80 BPM with like you want to get into sort of maybe jungle territory. By doubling it at 80 BPM, you get more of a sort of like, you know, two-step kind of feel. So that's really, really useful. You can also lock that as you go through the different things. So if you wanted to load a preset, you can hit load preset and, you know, as you might expect, it loads the preset in. Back here, we can randomize using this little double arrow icon right here and choose different presets through random. If you're feeling lucky. That is the preset browser, and of course you can tweak any presets sounds, or you can tweak their sequence, whatever you like. But if you want to make something from scratch, like a lot of people do, like I do, I'm going to go up to this little wrench icon in the upper right here, click it, and say new preset, reset. And it's going to say, hey, do you want to reset to default preset? I'm going to say, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to be over here on the kick channel. Let's just pick a kick in our first layer here. I'm going to pick, that's a pretty good kick, pillow kick. Let's load that up. Triaz will respond to MIDI information. I'm in Ableton right now. I'm using my keyboard to play these channels back starting on C1. So this means that if you don't want to use Triaz's sequencer, you can sequence it in your DAW of choice just using your notes. There's also a cool thing that happens here. You'll notice that this kick here has this little keyboard icon. Anything that has the keyboard icon on it means that if I go past the range of the notes that will play back the kit, I will start playing that back chromatically. This can be recorded to the sequencer in real time and quantized in order to create melodic lines. And it's pretty cool. We'll actually do that while we're creating this sequence. So I'm going to right click down here on the record button. I'm going to say quantize to grid, and I'm also going to say enable metronome. And now I'm going to go to our kick channel and I'm going to hit record and play. Now my DAW is not going right now. This is only Triaz that's going. So I'm just going to record a kick. There we go. You can see as I did that, the notes populated down in this little mini step sequencer down here. If I wanted to, I could put my own notes down there, and I can also increase and decrease the velocity. If we go over to the sequencer, we will see here that we have our kick, and I can adjust really quickly velocity here as well. Yeah. Let's go ahead and solo this kick real quick while we design it. I want to show you how the layer system works and how we can load different sounds in here and really create a cool sounding layered kick out of things. So let's go back into our pillow kick and pick a really deep kick with not a ton of punch to the attack. That's pretty good. So I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to go into B here, and I'm going to find a different layer to put on top, something that has a lot of good knock to it, like a good beater sound. So tight mids, that's pretty good. Ooh, pepper, there we go. So that'll be our transient. And then in C here, I'm going to go ahead and pick some kind of like Foley layer to put on top, maybe something a little stereo. So let's go ahead and use the Triaz triangle mixer thing over here to mix them together. As you can see, you can get a really cool, unique kick sound, or any sound that puts together all the elements that you're looking for. I like that. I'm going to turn off the linking here, and I'm going to go to C, and I'm going to actually take the hold and decay down here. There we go. I like that. I think that's great. Let's move on to our snare. Ooh, that's nice. Already so much more interesting than just that one snare sound. Let's add some hi-hat. Let's do it in real time. That's great. So remember how I said that each layer could be whatever you wanted? This little Foley sound here, the reason that the icon says Foley is because the sample here is a Foley sample. So if I was going to go in here and change this to like, let's see, ooh, I like that. Now you'll notice that because sample A was changed to an effect, the channel type down here is effect. However, what if I wanted this to be a different channel type just for visual? Well, I can right click down here and change it to any of these really cool little icons. I'm going to use this thing. I don't even know what this is for, but I like it. So you can do that with all of the channels here. You can change their look without changing the actual sample, but the samples that you choose will have an effect on the thing. Pick our snare here. I'm going to go to the sequencer here for this second snare and hit the randomize function here. Just fill in some stuff. Go back to the sound. Let's pick a new sample for this. Maybe we'll go into Foley and load this. Ooh, that's cool. So if I use this little friend right here, this little dice right here, I can randomize through these samples. Ooh, clunk sounds cool. It's kind of funky. I'm going to make this final channel over here, the effects channel. I'm going to make this playable with a keyboard by engaging the keyboard icon. Now, if I hit play, sounds like David S. Pumpkin. Because we used the quantized to grid, that has been quantized to the sequencer here. And you can see that under pitch, we have pitch choices here. So that's a great way to get quantized pitch values into your sequence. And that, friends, is the basic of making your own beat. It's really fun. It's really quick. And as you can see, like the sounds are top notch. Triaz comes with an enormous library of samples, as we've looked at, and that's great. But maybe if you wanted to add your own samples to this, you can do that as well. There's a couple ways to get them in here. One super simple way is to right-click on the waveform. You can see here that I now have a file browser, and I can add a sample from anywhere. Another way is dragging from a folder or your DAW into here, so I can just drag directly from Ableton right into here and load a sample that way. Another way where you can make all of your samples available to Triaz is by adding them to the user samples folder in the Triaz samples folder here. You'll see there's a user samples folder. I went and added a whole bunch of samples from a pack. Come back to our sample browser here, hit the refresh icon right here, and look, there we go. One of the really cool things here is that it actually uses tags on stuff if it can. That is a really useful little friend there. That is awesome. All right, welcome to one of the most powerful things that Triaz can do. This is the randomization functions that we have for the different drums. I've loaded up this cool little beat here. And what we're going to do is hit this drum randomizer here. We're going to go through all the different ways that we can randomize a kit and the layers. So let's hit play and start with the big rainbow here, the big rainbow in the room. Just hit randomize kit. If you like what's happened, great. If you don't forget that you have an undo up here. As you can hear, it's using a tagging system to pick from similar sounds. If you don't want it to, if you want things to get weird, over here on the left, we have the similar sounds button we can turn on and off. Let's turn it off and see what happens if we hit randomize kit. Yeah, that's good. Oh, hell yeah. That little whistle sounds great. I like that a lot. Super powerful, super fun. We can randomize each channel individually by using the dice right underneath its name. So for instance, our snare channel here, if I was to hit solo on the snare, hit play, you'll notice that all three of these light up when I hit this button. That's because it's randomizing all three of the layers. Remember, we have 3 layers for every channel. You'll notice also on the upper right-hand corner that our little Triaz isn't moving around, this little layer system here. But there is a randomize function for that, and that's right here. Below the channel randomizer, you'll see that we have randomization for each individual layer. And by clicking on the area to the left of the little dice, you can turn on and off randomization for that layer. So you can get incredibly granular with how you randomize your different functions here, which is super cool. Like if you really like the way something sounds, but you don't like the way something else sounds, you just kind of want to algorithmically have it choose something for you. You can get really nitty-gritty by locking channels off, or by locking off different layers by selecting them. The randomize function here in this is incredibly powerful. Just real quick, let's listen to some randomization of some of the other presets that come here so you can get a sense of what this can do for you. Turning off similar sounds now. That's cool. Let's talk about these 3 panels right here, our sound editing tools. We can link them on and off. In this case, I'm going to keep things linked just to make it a bit simple. And I'm going to hit solo and we'll listen to our kick while we go through this. So the first thing you'll see on the top here is choke on and off. We have a choke group setting. We have 4 different choke groups. And what that means is that a sound will cause another sound to stop playing if it shares the same choke group. A really common use for this is have a closed hi-hat choke the open hi-hat, like in the real world hi-hat world would actually work. The hi-hat world that we all live in. Next up, we have reverse. Fun to have reverse sounds, especially snares and stuff like that. Underneath that, we have our start point. This is great for taking transients off sounds or for adjusting Foley if it's a little too unruly. Very useful to have the start points there. Drive. Next control is called slop, and if we turn this up and then click the little arrow, we'll notice that we have random start time, random volume, random pitch, and random filter. This will randomize those 4 by the amounts that both this knob says and those sliders are. So every single time we get a new hit, we'll get some slop on those. Random pan. Great for percussion and pads and stabs and all kinds of things. Attack. You can see our envelope is shown up in that window there, which is great. If you want to use decay, we're going to hold down hold here, turn this down, and now we have a decay envelope. You can get very short and very long, which is great. Really like the visual feedback here. Finally, we have velocity sensitivity. If you were going to play velocity sensitive stuff, this would matter. Next up, we have pitch. Coarse. Fine. A pitch LFO. Let's turn this up and examine the settings. We click on this little arrow here. We're going to notice that we have all different kinds of shapes. If we turn random shape on all this all the way down, you'll see that we start with a sine wave, and then we're going to move through to triangle, sawtooth, and square, and then random shape adds some random to that if you want. This is for pitch. Rate with syncing and unsyncing. Pitch envelope. This is great to add like down sweeps and pitch to like things like kicks and 808 sounds. And if you want, it'll go in reverse as well. Attack and decay for that envelope. And finally, we can have velocity set to pitch. So depending on how hard the velocity is set, you will have different pitch changes. To the right of that, we have a multi-mode filter. You can see we have high pass, band pass, and low pass with resonance. We have an LFO that we can assign, same shapes, and this will automatically adjust the cutoff frequency. We also have a cutoff envelope with attack and decay. And those are the basic controls to shape your sound. Let's talk about our effects, because each channel has a series of channel effects and send effects, which can make a huge amount of difference in your sound. I'm going to use one of these effect sounds over here for this one.
Give it to me.
Not that one. Let's go to our channel effects. Here we have this really cool EQ. Each stage here has its own gauge staging, which is great. Next up is a comp, which can act as a brick wall limiter. We have a high pass filter for the detector, which means it won't focus on bass as much and compress based on the top end, which is a very classic technique in like dance music compression especially. Then finally we have a shaper. Now this is where things get really, really interesting. Over here we have a transient shaper. We can take the attack down. Click on this, you'll notice that we have slow, fast, and aggressive. So no attack. We can increase the sustain, which is great. An OTT style compressor. Listen to that. We all love that, don't we? Stereo width. Ooh, that's a nice algorithm. Drive. We've got a few different flavors of drive here. If we click on the arrow, you'll see we have tape, lo-fi, dark tube, and mid-crunch. Each one has its own bit of flavor. We have a sample rate reducer right here. That nice aliasing sound. And then this thing is so cool, this repitch function. What this does is simulates the SP1200 aliasing when you repitch something in the SP1200. So you can get this wonderful digital artifacting that is completely modeled after the SP1200. Really, really cool. I love the sound of it. And finally, a classic bit crusher. Beautiful. To the right of that, we have our send effects. So why don't we send some of this to the send effects? We go to the mixer here and choose the delay first. Our delay over here has time, as you might expect. We can sync and unsync it. Feedback. A drive. Ping pong or not. A high pass filter. A low pass filter. Mod rate. And depth. Go back to our mixer and turn off delay. Let's listen to the reverb. Let's turn up reverb right here, and you can notice that we can choose between reverb A and reverb B here, like this. Reverb A is an algorithmic reverb. In general, it's going to give you some longer reverbs. Sounds pretty nice. That's cool. Reverb B here is the real star of the show. This is a convolution reverb, and we're going to see that it has a ton of different impulse responses here, including some that were modeled after Wave Alchemy's other reverb plugins, and they've done a lot of reverb plugins. So for instance, in non-linear, we're going to find some very, very classic sounding gated reverbs that you may notice from very famous recordings. We have all kinds of halls. Just it's a really, really, really insane library of IRs in here. We have control over pre-delay, high-pass filter, low-pass filter, and smooth. Let's like that. All right. In order to get master effects going, I'm going to turn the rest of these channels back on. Let me adjust the sounds a little bit, and then we'll go over the master effects. I think that sounds pretty good. Let's go over to our master effects section and check this out. First up in our Master Effects section is our EQ. This is a more traditional EQ compared to the channel effects one. Very useful to have here. You can see that we can change each one of our 4 bands to a different EQ type, including, we're going to use here. There we go. Now, one of the cool things about this EQ is that while we can use the stereo mode, which is the current mode, we also have a really, really useful mid-side mode. This is really good for creating a richer and more clean stereo image in your beat, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. So what I'm going to do is switch to mid mode. Now in mid mode, this is going to affect only the mids, all the stuff that's right in the middle of your mix from a stereo perspective. Side is only the stereo image. Now what this is useful for, a lot of the times for me at least, is to pull low end out of the stereo image. You can hear it in that pad, especially. And what this does is it focuses the stereo image up here, right up here a little bit more, where we actually pay attention to frequencies a lot more clearly. It kind of can open up a stereo image of your track and your beat, which is really wonderful. Next up is our comp. Let's go ahead and turn it on. Anyone familiar with a compressor will be pretty familiar with these tools. We have our threshold right here, our ratio, attack release, a high-pass filter detector. So basically, this is going to ignore every frequency below this setting right here. And that means the threshold detector for the compressor will only focus on everything above that, which means that big old kick drum is going to ignore it and compress around the highs, which is a way to get cleaner compression, especially in dance music. So let's go ahead and turn the mix up. Don't forget to do that. You can immediately hear the compressor popping in. This can be a brick wall limiter. So let's set this to our highest ratio, no attack release, and just tame our peaks a little bit right there. Or we can do 50% mix and do a nice little parallel compression bit right here. Up here, we have a gain stage for each one of these as well. Finally, our maximizer. Things are very cool here. Let's turn it on. First thing you might want to do is add a little bit of limiting. So we can pull this down here. You can immediately hear that limiter kick in. It's really, really nice. We're going to come back to that. We have drive here. And there are numerous flavors of drive. That was crunch. We have cassette, tape 1, and tape 2, and each one has their own quality. You can get some really wonderfully lo-fi nastiness with this stuff. Next up is noise right here. If you ever wanted to add water to your EDM type beat, now you can. We have a bunch of different flavors of noise in here. This would be really great for lo-fi or future garage or something like that. Here we have an over-the-top style expander compressor effect from 0% blend to 100% blend. Because this is a compressor expander that's going to squish your sound quite a bit and add this sort of like hi-fi sheen. It's really great in small amounts unless you want to make a really crazy, like, I don't know, hyper-pop sort of beat. Finally, we have some clipping right here. Great way to get a little bit of extra gain that's not limiting. We'll pull this down. That beat is sounding extremely chunky. This is before and after. So much more up in your face. I really, really like that. Why don't we talk about the sequencer now? Remember, you can get to there up here on the top left by selecting sequencer. This is an incredibly powerful sequencer. Let's start with our kick channel and see what we can do here. So first of all, over here on the right, I can select the endpoint for this. So technically, for that 4 on the floor beat, all I would really need would be that one kick right here, and it would repeat on that. If I was drawing this in for the first time, I could come over here to the left of the channel where it says kick, and I could use the plus symbol to repeat that over the course of the channel, which is really great. We have the ability to completely clear it right here, and then we can go ahead and randomize a kick pattern in here if we want. We have solo, mute, and basically target. So if you wanted to get really, really in-depth with your editing here, this is the way to do it. Click this little button right here. This is the timing for the channel. We can have all the way down to a whole bar to something probably really fast, 148. That's super fast. And what that means here is I could, for instance, make my hi-hats triplets if I wanted to. And that means I can create polymeters and polyrhythms with each channel, which is super cool. I also have the length. We already talked about that. You can adjust it here, or you can adjust it with that little handle. Swing per channel, which is super cool. Down the bottom here, the global area, we can change the rate for everything at once. We can change the length for everything at once, and we can change the swing for everything at once. You can adjust between pattern banks if you want to. You can randomize all. You can change the speed just like we did in the preview thing here. So you can double and half time your preset. For some reason, you wanted to go that fast. Let's move over here to the right of drum, and we have a repeat. This is going to be a series of ratchets. So let's use our hi-hat here as an example. Pretty self-explanatory, great for all kinds of stuff. It's great to have ratchets. Next up is chance. Each one of these steps can have a chance of occurring. So let's use actually our ride down here, and we will randomize the chance function here, like that. And now you can hear that we have chances whether or not those will hit. If we randomize it again, you can see that there's a bigger and smaller chance for certain things to occur. Next up is start. This is going to nudge the track before and after the grid. So if you want to create more humanized beats, this is one way to do it. You can hear now this is push-pulling against it. So you can move your snares a little bit before or after, which is really, really great. I'm going to take this top snare here and move it early. Yeah, get a little bit of that schlump going on. That's nice. Pitch, as you might expect, is pitch. So let's do our hi-hat again. Actually, let's do our ride. And as we saw earlier, we can play into this chromatically with our MIDI controller, and we can record MIDI sequences that have 12-tone pitch to it, which is great. Finally, we have motion. This is incredibly powerful. So we're going to need to set some up for this, and that means we're going back to our sound page here. And what I'm going to do is pick a sound. I'm going to go over to our crash here and pick a new sound. Great. So now we have this effect here, this sound, it's recorded. Let's pick something to send to parameters. I think I'm going to right-click on Rev here, and I'm going to say Motion Sequence 1. So now if we go back to our sequencer and go to Motion, we're going to see Send Reverb is right here, and here's our hits. So I can now adjust Send Reverb, because I assigned it to Motion Sequence 1 like that. I'm going to pick Decay, and I'm going to say Motion Sequence 2. There we go. That's cool. If we go into Channel Effects, how about our repitcher? So I'll assign this to Motion Sequence 3. So this is a way to sequence all the stuff that you have as controls for your sounds to make them more interesting. So now that we're here, I want to show you some things that I've almost forgotten here that'll help us draw this 16th note hi-hat. Obviously, I can just click my mouse and do this. That's wonderful and all. But if I hold right-click, I can actually draw a line. So those that use Ableton's automation are probably familiar with a concept like this, where you can hold a button and create a line. This is just holding right-click and you can draw a line, which is really, really cool. Another thing you can do is hold Shift and draw that line, and it is straight, just completely straight across. Really, really useful for just drawing in the same value if things have gotten a little too crazy. So keep that in mind. So now we have our open hi-hat in here. We're going to go over to Motion, and here's our amp decay. I'm going to go ahead and draw some wiggles here to give us a little bit of variation to that decay. One really cool use for motion is sequencing our XY pad up here between our 3 layers. So I have 3 different sounds on here, which all go together. I'm going to go ahead and right click and assign this to motion sequence 1 and Y to motion sequence 2. Now let's go over to our sequencer, go to motion. You can see here, I'll just go ahead and randomize this. Isn't that cool? This little Foley sound here, I have 3 little sounds as well. So let's go ahead and assign this X to motion sequence 3 and Y to motion sequence 4. Head on over to our sequencer. You know we're going to hit randomize. Add a little bit of ratchets to this. We have a cool, like, little IDM, I don't know, little thing. It's doing a little thing. So yeah, don't sleep on modulating the XY pad. It's super, super cool. So finally, I'd love to show you how we can take what we've done in Triaz and export it into our DAW with audio and MIDI. I'm going to go ahead and open up a different preset for this. How about this one, blocked user? So I'm going to go down here to export on the bottom. I'm going to hit export and I'm going to hit click to render selected audio tracks. I can look here and say, hey, do I want different parts of this? Maybe I don't want the kick in there. Maybe I want to make parts of it that like are just kick and the snare, and then I'll do a top loop version. That's a pretty powerful thing, right? We can change the speed here and also change the length. So if you wanted to be like, 4 times as long, you could. So let's go ahead and click render audio and see what happens. Look at it go. Now that we have this here, I can do exactly what it says and drag this right into my DAW. And if we solo this channel and take a listen, we'll hear the exact same beat we just worked on. Super powerful. I can also do the same thing with MIDI. So if I say click to build selected MIDI tracks and then drag this, I have just now created the MIDI from the sequencer that we had going in Triaz. Again, really, really powerful. It's nice when you can get stuff out of plugins, and what the plugin offers a lot, and then you can like take that and put it into a different context. And I think the rendering to audio is an incredibly useful feature to have here. Well, everybody, that is it from me. Thank you so much for watching this tour of Triaz. I hope you have seen how powerful this little friend can be. If you have any questions, leave a comment. We'll try to get to it. Make sure you check the video description for links to where you can check out Triaz for yourself. That's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jeremy. On behalf of Wave Alchemy, I hope you have a wonderful day.